It was uncomfortable or unnecessary, or towards the end I just wouldn't do it. I didn't see the point in feeding those ghastly people.
Meghan Markle's lifestyle brand reportedly sold out in just 45 minutes. But behind that headline was a stock run of fewer than 2,000 units. Now the product line has vanished, Netflix has pulled back, and the Sussexes are facing mounting financial pressure. Why did As Ever disappear so suddenly? Are Meghan and Harry now burning through their inheritance to maintain their lifestyle? And has King Charles already decided to cut them off completely? Meghan Markle's ambitious lifestyle brand As Ever launched with high expectations and high visibility. But within just a few months, it came to a screeching halt. Without explanation or elaboration, the entire product line vanished. Meghan publicly vowed not to restock anything until sometime next year, but those close to the situation say the reality is far more serious. According to Lady Colin Campbell, the project is not merely paused, it is potentially dead in the water. She describes it not as ever, but as never, pointing to signs of deeper financial trouble behind the brand's sudden collapse. The numbers tell the story. Meghan claimed that the product line sold out within 45 minutes. But that wasn't a success story, it was a red flag. According to Lady Colin, that speed had less to do with overwhelming demand and more to do with extremely limited stock. She says that the total volume of merchandise produced was in the low thousands, a range so small that it barely scratched the surface of what would be required for any serious retail operation. The reason for that low volume, she says, is simple: lack of funding. The Duchess and Duke of Sussex had hoped that Netflix, with whom they signed a major content deal, would also help finance the product line. That assumption was baked into how the brand was pitched, not just to the public, but to potential investors and partners. Meghan allegedly presented the arrangement as a joint venture of sorts, where Netflix would help bring As Ever to market as a multi-platform brand. But Netflix did not play along. The media giant provided only limited support, unwilling to fund a product line it viewed as speculative and risky. As Lady Colin explained, the company wasn't willing to take that kind of financial gamble. The result was a bare-bones rollout, quickly sold out not because of overwhelming consumer interest, but because there simply wasn't enough stock to meet even modest expectations. In business terms, it was a controlled failure, packaged to look like a success. The implications of this collapse stretch beyond one failed brand. It's now being suggested that Harry and Meghan are beginning to rely on inherited wealth, specifically money left by Princess Diana and the Queen Mother. Lady Colin states unequivocally that the couple is eating into capital, and that this has been happening for some time. She points out that Prince Harry, despite public perception, was never extraordinarily wealthy. The idea that being the king's son made him a financial heavyweight was always a myth. Measured against figures like Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates, Harry is not even in the same universe. And even compared to other royals, his actual liquid wealth has always been modest. Most of his financial security came from inheritances, trust funds, and a military pension. But Lady Colin claims that over the course of their marriage, he and Meghan have steadily drawn down on that base. Now, with fewer lucrative projects ahead and many deals reportedly stalled or canceled, they appear to be running out of fallback options. Lady Colin's critique doesn't stop there. She points to a strategic error in how As Ever was handled, arguing that it reflects a pattern of overreach and misunderstanding about how commercial ventures actually function. Her own experience negotiating a jewelry line with QVC, a major television shopping channel, informs her analysis. She explains that to successfully launch a product line, the inventory must be funded in bulk well in advance, typically in quantities of 20 to 30,000 units. Retailers and platforms like Netflix or QVC expect that scale to meet demand once promotion begins. But Meghan's line didn't come close. The numbers appear to have been in the range of 1,000 to 1,500 pieces, a tenth or less of what would be needed for real success. This meant that when the items sold out quickly, it didn't signify strong demand. It only confirmed how little had been produced. As Lady Colin puts it, Netflix likely funded the brand's first run at a derisory amount, then declined to invest further. That decision, she says, effectively doomed the brand before it even launched. And now, Meghan is left with a brand that cannot scale, cannot attract investors, and cannot generate sustainable revenue. She is reportedly trying to find new backers, but the prospects are uncertain at best. Without major capital or a committed platform partner, there is little chance of success. Lady Colin states bluntly that Harry and Meghan don't have the class of money to fund an enterprise of this magnitude on their own. And unless someone else is willing to take a significant risk, as ever, may never return to market. This financial instability feeds into a much broader concern: the overall financial health of the Sussex household. Meghan is believed to still be pursuing her goal of becoming a billionaire through business ventures, but Lady Colin calls this ambition total insanity. She believes Meghan's expectations are wildly disconnected from commercial reality, pointing out that her name does not carry the kind of consumer appeal necessary to drive such scale. And in her assessment, the public has already turned away. Lady Colin highlights a key point that goes beyond spreadsheets and brand strategy: reputation. She believes that Meghan's repeated public conflicts, particularly her treatment of the late Queen Elizabeth, Prince Philip, King Charles, Catherine the Princess of Wales, and her own father, have deeply alienated the public. For many consumers, that negative perception is irreversible. As Lady Colin puts it, Meghan's chances of launching a truly profitable lifestyle empire are rapidly diminishing. The foundation has cracked, the public trust is gone, the capital is shrinking, and the dream, once backed by a 9-figure content deal, is now held together by public relations and speculative ambition. What comes next depends not just on marketing, but on whether there is any meaningful trust left to build upon. When a brand collapses, the public sees the headlines: sold out or delayed, paused or pivoted. But behind the scenes, there is almost always a more pressing issue at play: money. In Meghan and Harry's case, the warning signs go far deeper than the product shelves. Lady Colin Campbell has made it clear that what we're witnessing is not a simple business misstep. It is the symptom of a larger financial instability. According to her, Meghan is now scrambling for new ways to fund her commercial ambitions. With As Ever stalled and Netflix uninterested in further investment, she's reportedly exploring partnerships with fashion designers. But there's a catch. These deals do not deliver big paydays. In the licensing model she is likely to pursue, Meghan would receive only a small cut of profits, perhaps as little as 3%, maybe 5%, 10% if she's unusually lucky. And that's assuming the clothes sell at all. Lady Colin doesn't mince words. She believes Meghan's hopes of becoming a billionaire through brand deals are completely unrealistic. The numbers simply do not add up. In her view, Meghan has misunderstood the nature of the fashion industry, underestimating how much capital, infrastructure, and credibility are needed to launch something meaningful. Without a large financial backer willing to cover design, production, inventory, marketing, and logistics, Meghan is left chasing small deals with limited upside. That same financial fragility extends to Prince Harry. While the memoir Spare brought in decent earnings, Lady Colin estimates that Harry's net worth, at best, sits somewhere between $35 and $40 million. That might seem substantial, but not when compared to the lifestyle the couple is determined to maintain. As Lady Colin points out, their lifestyle mimics that of billionaires, with multiple estates, private security, luxury travel, and a level of spending that far exceeds their income. She breaks it down in simple terms. To sustain that kind of lifestyle, they would need between $400 million and $600 million in capital. What they currently have is barely a tenth of that. The income streams they do possess, book royalties, speaking engagements, and occasional media deals, aren't enough to close the gap. In fact, Lady Colin suggests that even Spare, which was heavily marketed as a blockbuster release, ended up being a financial disappointment for the publisher. The problem, she explains, is how publishing deals are structured. Royalties are calculated based on the recommended retail price, not the discounted sale price. But Spare was heavily discounted from the start, often by 50% or more. That means Penguin Random House, the publisher, had little room to recoup its investment. And while Harry likely received a handsome advance, that does not guarantee long-term earnings. Once the media buzz faded and the backlash began, the book's performance became more of a liability than an asset. Meanwhile, the money that did come in is not sitting untouched. It is being spent. Lady Colin emphasizes that even large windfalls can disappear quickly when funneled into maintaining high overheads. Security, staff, property maintenance, and travel costs all add up. The expenses are relentless, and without ongoing stable income, even millions can drain faster than expected. Adding to the pressure is the reality that Prince Harry no longer receives funding from the royal family. King Charles, according to Lady Colin, is determined not to provide additional financial support. She says that the monarch has already drawn a clear line and is prepared to enforce it. Should Harry come back, cap in hand, as she puts it, the response will not be lenient. This is not just speculation. Lady Colin draws a direct comparison to how King Charles has dealt with Prince Andrew's financial fallout. The message is simple. The days of open-ended royal funding are over. In this environment, every financial move matters. That's why Meghan's pivot to fashion raised eyebrows. At the same time her failed lifestyle brand was retreating from the spotlight, reports surfaced about her attempts to land a Vogue cover. But instead of a public relations win, it backfired. According to Lady Colin, Meghan not only demanded a global cover from editor Anna Wintour, she also allegedly tried to push Serena Williams, her one remaining celebrity ally, off the U.S. edition of the magazine. This incident, though largely overshadowed in mainstream coverage, reflects the same pattern Lady Colin sees elsewhere: unrealistic demands, poor timing, and a misunderstanding of public sentiment. As she explains, even Victoria Beckham, who is more established in fashion and married to a global icon, took years and tens of millions of pounds from David Beckham to make her brand viable. Victoria wears clothes better, presents herself more naturally in fashion, and still has to fight for profitability. Meghan, by contrast, is entering the market with a damaged reputation and far less capital. Lady Colin does not deny that Meghan could still earn a respectable income if the clothes are wearable and the licensing deals structured well. But she is adamant that this will not lead to billionaire status. At best, it might offer a temporary revenue stream, just enough to delay the larger financial reckoning that is coming. And beneath all of this is a reputational problem money cannot fix. Lady Colin argues that the public has not forgotten how Meghan treated her family and the royal family. From throwing her father under the bus to launching public accusations against the late Queen, Prince Philip, King Charles, and the Prince and Princess of Wales, the public perception has shifted. Even those who once supported her are now questioning the sincerity of her narrative. This matters because brand ventures rely not just on products, but on trust. Consumers have to believe in the person behind the label, and in Meghan's case, that belief has eroded. Lady Colin predicts that unless something drastic changes, Meghan's future efforts, whether in fashion, media, or lifestyle products, will struggle to find long-term traction. As their costs grow and their income narrows, the Sussexes may soon find themselves in a corner with no clear path forward. The brand is fractured, the funding is uncertain, the public is skeptical, and the royal family, once a silent fallback, has made it clear: the bank is closed. What remains is a couple faced with difficult decisions, shrinking resources, and a future that now looks far less secure than it did just 2 years ago. If financial pressure was already mounting behind the scenes, then the question becomes, where do Harry and Meghan go from here? According to Lady Colin Campbell, the couple's remaining options are growing increasingly limited. What once seemed like a multi-million-dollar brand-building journey is now looking more like a game of containment, scrambling to plug holes before the bottom falls out. And the monarchy, which once might have been a fallback, is now firmly shutting its doors. Lady Colin states without hesitation that King Charles has made it clear: There will be no more financial support for Harry. The days of relying on the royal family's private funding or public allowances are gone. She draws a direct comparison to the case of Prince Andrew, who also found himself financially isolated after falling out of public favor. In both instances, King Charles appears to be sending a message. If you step away from the institution, you step away from the financial safety net too. In her words, should Harry return cap in hand, the response will not be lenient. The monarch is prepared to be firm, and this rigidity is not driven by emotion alone. It is also about precedent. Charles cannot afford to appear lenient with one son while maintaining strict standards for others. The monarchy is under scrutiny, and public trust hinges in part on the perception of accountability and fairness. Harry, now a private citizen by choice, is expected to stand on his own. That shift in attitude is forcing Meghan and Harry into a reevaluation of their public and commercial strategies. With the collapse of As Ever and failed attempts to secure high fashion credibility, Meghan has turned to more traditional public relations tactics. But Lady Colin argues that these efforts are increasingly transparent. One particular incident caught her attention, a viral TikTok video from an American Airlines flight attendant who claimed to have served Meghan Markle and received a handwritten thank you note in return. The video shows the flight attendant holding up the note, praising Meghan as beautiful, sweet, and royal. The note, written in cursive, thanks the crew for their hospitality and signs off with, "All love right back to you, forever, Meghan." It quickly spread across social media, appearing in multiple press outlets. But Lady Colin was skeptical. She questioned the timing, the public exposure, and the mechanics of how such a message went viral so quickly. As she pointed out, no professional flight attendant would be allowed to publicly reveal a celebrity's presence on a flight, especially not without the airline's permission. Doing so would typically result in disciplinary action, if not outright dismissal. The fact that the story was first pushed through People magazine, known for its friendly coverage of Meghan, raised further suspicion. To Lady Colin, this had all the hallmarks of a managed narrative, designed to soften Meghan's image amid a wave of negative stories. And it would not be the first time. Lady Colin describes a familiar pattern. Whenever Meghan faces criticism, an opposing story surfaces, one that reframes her as kind, generous, or misunderstood. She believes that the TikTok note story was not an accident, but a strategic counter to another report she had been tracking, one that involved allegations about Meghan mistreating aircrew on a different airline. By releasing the handwritten note story first, Meghan's team could create a more flattering image before the negative press emerged. These tactics, according to Lady Colin, have a short shelf life. They may generate brief sympathy or distract from a scandal, but they do not reverse the underlying reputational damage. In Meghan's case, the pattern of combative interviews, strained family relationships, and withdrawn projects has built a long-term narrative that even the most well-timed PR stunts cannot erase. At a certain point, image campaigns lose their impact when not supported by results. That brings us to the deeper concern: public disinterest. Lady Colin warns that Meghan's ventures, whether fashion lines, book deals, or documentaries, suffer from one critical problem. People are no longer invested in her success. The initial fascination that followed her royal departure has turned into skepticism and, in many circles, outright disapproval. According to Lady Colin, there is a growing sense that Meghan's actions have alienated the very audiences she once hoped to influence. This problem becomes most apparent when comparing her efforts to figures like Victoria Beckham. Lady Colin notes that Victoria had the advantage of public goodwill, fashion credibility, and personal discipline. Even then, it took years and massive investment from David Beckham to make her brand viable. And that was with a clean reputation. Meghan, by contrast, has neither the capital nor the public trust needed to build something sustainable. Lady Colin says this is the central issue. Meghan cannot finance large-scale ventures on her own, and others are increasingly hesitant to back her. She outlines the most likely scenario moving forward. Meghan will enter licensing deals where her name is attached to products she did not create, own, or fund. She may receive a percentage of profits, but will have no significant equity. That structure does not lead to billionaire status. It leads to short-term gains, often tied to external interest or press cycles, but it is not the foundation for lasting wealth. Meghan's dream of building an empire may survive in ambition, but not in practice. And that brings us back to Harry. With his publishing moment behind him and the streaming deals reportedly stalling, he now finds himself in a precarious financial position. Lady Colin believes that the pair have burned through much of their available capital, and without a new anchor project or backer, they will soon face difficult choices. Downsizing, selling assets, or perhaps returning to the very institution they distanced themselves from, but this time without leverage. Lady Colin is clear in her view. If that moment comes, the answer from King Charles will be cold. The door is not open. The funding is not waiting. And the sympathy that once existed, both from the palace and the public, has largely run out. The deeper this story goes, the more it exposes a fundamental gap between ambition and reality. Meghan Markle's aspirations for wealth, influence, and global branding were built on a foundation that now appears increasingly fragile. And as Lady Colin Campbell explains, the latest strategic pivot toward fashion only highlights how desperate the situation may have become. Meghan's announcement of a renewed focus on fashion came just as the failed As Ever venture disappeared from public conversation. Lady Colin believes the timing was no coincidence. She suggests it was a carefully staged shift, an effort to stay ahead of growing criticism and financial scrutiny. But the move, rather than inspiring confidence, only raised more questions, especially in light of recent revelations about Meghan's previously failed efforts to secure a Vogue cover. According to Lady Colin, not only did Meghan demand a global cover from Anna Wintour, but she also tried to push her close friend Serena Williams off the US edition to secure the spotlight for herself. This move, if true, reinforces a pattern that Lady Colin says has been evident from the beginning: overreach, entitlement, and misreading the cultural temperature. These are not minor errors in judgment. They are the kind of miscalculations that alienate potential partners and erode public goodwill. In fashion, reputation is everything. And as Lady Colin points out, even Victoria Beckham, with years of brand development and tens of millions of pounds in backing from David Beckham, struggled to make her clothing line profitable. Victoria had the public's trust, the industry's respect, and an image that fit the product. Meghan, in contrast, faces skepticism from nearly every direction. That contrast goes beyond style. According to Lady Colin, Victoria Beckham understood the slow pace of fashion business success. She was willing to play the long game. Meghan, on the other hand, appears to expect immediate results, high earnings, and industry reverence, without doing the slow, foundational work. In Lady Colin's words, there is no path for Meghan to become a billionaire from fashion or branding, especially when she has no meaningful equity or ownership in the products being sold. Instead, Lady Colin expects Meghan to enter into basic licensing deals, agreements where her name is used to endorse a product, but where she holds no creative control and no financial stake beyond a small percentage of profit. These are deals designed to extract a quick burst of earnings, not build generational wealth. And with public interest in her personal brand continuing to fall, even these opportunities are likely to be short-lived. Meanwhile, Meghan's track record with the public continues to weigh heavily. Lady Colin brings up the broader moral response that still surrounds her treatment of family, particularly her father, Thomas Markle. She says that for many people, this is the single most unforgivable act. The decision to publicly disown and disparage a parent, especially after years of publicly praising him, broke something fundamental in the way audiences perceived her. Lady Colin explains that even among those who may have been sympathetic to Meghan's issues with the royal family, the betrayal of her father came across as cold, calculated, and deeply unsettling. She makes it clear that many people hold traditional values when it comes to family. Even if there are disagreements, they expect loyalty, or at the very least, privacy. What shocked many, Lady Colin says, is not just that Meghan distanced herself from her father, but that she did so in such a public, media-driven way. The resulting damage to her image has been lasting. These reputational fractures have consequences far beyond headlines. They affect Meghan's commercial potential. As Lady Colin points out, investors do not want volatility. Designers do not want drama. Retailers do not want controversy. They want consistency, trust, and a customer base that believes in the face behind the brand. And right now, Meghan's brand is one of uncertainty and division, not strength. For Prince Harry, the consequences are equally sobering. Lady Colin states clearly that he is not in a position to fund large-scale ventures. The money from his book and earlier deals is not enough to keep their lifestyle afloat for the long term. And with no reliable revenue stream ahead, the choices become limited. They can downsize, return to royal duties with conditions, or risk falling into deeper financial distress. Lady Colin raises one final warning. She believes King Charles is bracing for the moment when Harry returns seeking help. And while there may be personal sympathy, the financial answer will be clear: no. She emphasizes that Charles has been firm in his stance with Prince Andrew and is expected to show the same resolve with Harry. Should Harry come back, the conditions will not be favorable. Support, if offered at all, would come with strict expectations and significant consequences. As Lady Colin phrases it, a gibbet around the neck. This phrase, while metaphorical, conveys a deep sense of finality. The era of unconditional support is over. And for Meghan and Harry, the reality of their situation is becoming harder to disguise. Lavish appearances cannot cover shrinking bank accounts. PR stunts cannot hide diminishing credibility. And no amount of image control can reverse the damage of broken family ties and commercial failures. The dream of building an empire independent from the crown was bold, but boldness without structure leads to collapse. As Lady Colin sees it, the Sussexes are nearing a breaking point. Their income does not match their expenses. Their ventures do not match their aspirations. And their public standing no longer matches their ambition. What happens next is uncertain. But one thing, she says, is almost guaranteed. The days of soft landings and second chances are over. From here on out, every misstep carries a cost. And if they are not careful, those costs could turn into consequences they can no longer afford to ignore. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.